Looks like we are live. People about to start coming in.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining. If you're coming through right now, to come through to check us out, we are about to get into some nitty gritty here. We're about to get into some history, about to bring it to the present. We're going to talk organizing. We're going to talk a lot of stuff. So thank you as you're coming in. Hit the like button as you're coming in too. If you want to talk about the historical parallels with ICE,
Right.
boost this video out to other people in the algorithm so we can make more people aware of our conversation. But I'm happy to be joined again here with the great Dr. Terry Ann Scott. She's an award-winning historian, author, speaker. You may have seen her out here on Substack. She's doing great work here as well. Director of the Institute of Common Power, former African-American history professor and chair of the Department of History at Hood College. She is heading to Minneapolis here to do a teach-in this Sunday to basically bring the historical parallels from slave catchers to Jim Crow to everything we face in America here into the present moment. But I just want to say thank you for taking the time to join me again. I loved our last conversation. We had to do another one.
Thank you for having me here. It's great. It's such an honor to be on your program and be a part in some small measure today of the incredible work that you're doing every day. So thanks for having me, Ahmed.
No, thank you. I mean, you're the one out here doing that. You're doing the work that really matters in educating and informing people. And I'm glad you're doing this teaching because there's a point I've been making a lot where we keep looking to Nazi Germany and the Gestapo comparisons, looking abroad, even current modern day authoritarians for historical parallels. But as we know, we have to look no further than American history. And in a
Right.
sense, it sometimes almost absolves us a little bit as if this is only a foreign thing, where in reality, there is, the Jim Crow South, of course, and then
Yeah.
there's slave catchers, which is perhaps a more poignant, direct parallel. So could you explain that parallel for us a little bit here?
Absolutely. So first, I just want to kind of shout out my colleagues because we'll be doing this teach-in live from Minneapolis, and I'll be joined by Dr. Uhuru Williams, who's a professor at St. Thomas in Minneapolis. He'll be on the ground, and Dr. David Domke, who is my colleague here at the Institute for Common Power. And so, initially we were going to do this teach-in on February 1st, which is the 100th anniversary of Black History Month. We were going to do it in Montgomery about the Montgomery bus boycott. And I woke up one morning and thought, there is no way that we can not talk about the historical parallels here. Yes, as you have said, we hear much about the comparison of ICE and the Gestapo, and it is a very valid comparison. But we don't need to go overseas to find that comparison. We can stay right here. This morning on our Substack and on our Instagram, I posted a picture from 1963 in Birmingham, where the police are attacking peaceful protesters with dogs and biting them. And so when people are saying this has never happened in America before, it has happened repeatedly. And as you noted, we can go back to the slave catchers. That is why we have entitled this teach-in that ICE are modern day slave catchers. And so I can get into some of the history of what that looks like and what the slave catchers are. And so people have said, well, is that a current or a good comparison? Indeed, it is. When you look at the people whom they are taking, these are individuals who are Black and brown individuals who are marginalized folks in society. ICE is attacking Black and brown people. Slave catchers were charged with attacking Black people who either were fugitive slaves, i.e., an immigrant in this country, or freeborn individuals whom they kidnap, just like ICE is taking citizens today.
Exactly.
Right. So you have that parallel. By 1850, you had something called the Compromise, a compromise of 1850. And the 1850 compromise dictated that there would be more federal funds put into retrieving individuals who ran away from slavery and bringing them back to their slave owners. And so what did that look like? If you captured somebody who was African American and took them before a magistrate, they had no right to testify on their behalf. And the magistrate would give $10 to the individual who brought them to be placed into slavery if they found that they were enslaved, but $5 for setting them free. So they were incentivized, just like bonuses for ICE. They were incentivized by putting people back into this system. But one of the really key things that I want to definitely talk about when we're at this teach-in is that it engendered a level of abolitionism across difference that we hadn't seen previously. Just like ICE is doing today, it is causing us to come together to fight this iniquitous endeavor.
So true. Dr. Scott, you once again got ahead of all my questions. You got
Oh,
all my
sorry.
questions. No, it was great. It was a perfect
Let's delve in
thesis.
more.
No, it was a
Okay.
perfect thesis because I was about to go bit by bit
Okay.
from the Compromise of 1850 to the backlash that ensued. Because you're right, it effectively engendered and created a new pro-black sentiment in the North. It
Mm.
really brought the realities of slavery up top. More abolitionists rose, so we can get to that backlash element
Yes.
closer to the end here. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the that compromise of 1850. The
Yeah.
key compromise included that Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 within there, right? And
Yeah.
that's what empowered the state to essentially authorize these slave catchers. And I think that is the key comparison here, because there are some people who act as if it's controversial to make the
Yeah.
comparison, because it's not a direct moral comparison, right? There,
Right.
as disgusting as what ICE is doing, it's not like it's not this, it's not equivalent to
Right.
returning people to slavery, right? Like it's so
Right.
but at the same time, what this is, these are paid agents that are state sanctioned.
Correct.
They are protected by federal law,
Mhm.
and so it's
Snatching
very
people
similar.
off of the streets.
Snatching people off the street, racial profiling, because
Right.
back then it was black people. So, like you said, there was freeborn black people that were getting picked up in this.
Right.
And so on that legality front, and on the just that part of it, that comparison where there is the use of law and wrapping it around upholding the rule of law component of this, and
Right.
penalizing people. So like people were standing up to an unjust law,
Right.
right? And basically, there was this massive backlash with the Northerners, because
Yeah.
they essentially didn't want to see their neighbors being snatched up, and
No.
they put themselves at risk. Like we have that example. I've one example that I was reading into, Shadrach Minkins, who
Mhm.
was that famous former slave, who they basically, there was networks of people in Boston
Yes.
that went and activated to rescue him at a courthouse, and we're seeing similar things there. So like, what lessons can we learn from those resistance movements, those networks that rose up during that time to push back on the slave catchers?
Right, so it's a backlash, as you said, and with the Compromise of 1850, California comes as a free state, and the southern states said, "Okay, well, this is what you're going to do for us." And so that's why you have this enforced Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. And so when then they are ignited, these agents, and that's why we draw the parallel, ICE agents, but they are slave catchers who are going into the communities and quite literally snatching people off of the streets, whether they are born free or not. It is the visibility of the violence. It is the visibility of the injustice that is right in people's faces, just like on the streets of Minneapolis and Chicago and Baltimore and Phoenix and all these other places where people are rising up. It is the visibility that engendered that kind of connectedness across racial difference. One of my favorite stories that comes out of this era is a story that happened in Wisconsin in 1854 in Racine, Wisconsin, when there is a man who was a fugitive slave. He was a runaway slave, and they found out where he was, and people went to recapture him. And so the slave catchers take him out of his home, and in these kind of newspapers that have now turned into legacy, they said he was so strong he broke the shackles, and they put him back into the back of a carriage, and they took him to the jail. And then a mob gathered outside. Now, I'm a scholar of lynching. When a white mob gathers outside of a jailhouse, the way I have written about it is that they are there to capture this black person and lynch them, because that's historically what we have seen after the Civil War. But in this case, because of the slave catchers, because of the visibility of the injustice, a white mob gathered outside of that jail. And instead of lynching this person, they took him out of the jail, forced their way into the jail, put him on horseback, and sent him into Canada to be
Yeah.
free. It gives me chills, never to be heard from again. It is those kinds of stories that give me hope right now, because it is the people who are coming together, who were reacting to the injustices of the slave catchers, that we are seeing in the streets reacting to the injustices of ICE. And what I can say to us right now is we beat them then, and we will beat them now. We're already starting
Yes.
to see movement on that front.
Yes, exactly. Because if we could beat them then, and then I'll beat them again in the Jim Crow South, we could
Yes.
do it now under far greater legal protections. Because you're right, back then they were sending multiple. There's so many stories. I encourage everyone to look into this. There's also a great
Thank you.
Politico article over the summer, and also go to the teach-in. I'll put a link in
Yes,
the I'll put a link in
please.
the body of this write up I'm going to do on this video
Thank you.
afterwards. But I encourage everyone to look into this. There's multiple instances of people sending former slaves to Canada. There's a couple
Yeah.
that was sent to Canada. Like they're. This is not America. There is this hunger for freedom among us. Like there's this human capacity to understand injustice and
Yeah.
morality, and people rallied around their neighbors, just like they're doing right now in Minneapolis and Minnesota. And unfortunately, we see people losing their lives. Alex Preddy. This is my first live since that. Disgusting. And other instances we've seen in the slave catchers era, citizens, Americans getting violently hurt by federal agents when they were
Right.
protecting people as well. So that's where that comparison comes into play. And I don't think it's controversial. I've seen right-wing media go after
No.
Jasmine Crockett for that. I think her comparison is totally grounded in history, as we're discussing
Right.
here. And
Right.
another interesting parallel that I've seen is that just like we have sanctuary city laws now, there were people who did states who did personal liberty laws to protect
Yes.
slaves then.
Mhm.
Are that obviously the sanctuary city laws don't go far enough. Are you thinking as one of the lessons that can be learned there, aside from the networks kind of mobilizing, is maybe states
Yeah.
um doing more?
That's what the state of Wisconsin did. And so in the case when the gentleman was rescued and then sent to Detroit, they tried to try one of the men who was the head of that, Joshua Booth. And so the state said, you know what? He is not committing a crime in here in harboring and helping a fugitive slave because we don't actually recognize the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act. They
Mhm.
rejected it. Now, the Supreme Court came back and said you can't do that, but it was a way of states to take control and say that we are going to stand on the right side of justice and morality and not allow for this to happen. And so, yes, I think that if we continue to have this concerted effort of the states, and what we really see are the judges, right? This is why local elections and the election of judges is so important, because the judges are really becoming one of our last lines of defense in telling the administration, you're not going to do that. We're not going to allow that. I just saw this morning that a federal judge stopped the Trump administration from deporting that beautiful little 5-year-old
Yeah.
child and his father. So that in some ways is part of our line of defense. It requires a concerted effort. And the other thing that's happening when we talk about a backlash, because now some of the Republicans like Greg Abbott, when did we think that would happen, are speaking out against Trump and what they're doing with ICE, is that the unfortunate reality, and we have seen this historically, is that when white people begin to die, there often begins to be a different response from a nation. In 1964, with Freedom
Yep.
Summer, Bob Moses, Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, who constructed this, they said if we bring down some of America's elite white college students, the cameras will come. And that's exactly what they did. They brought down 1,200 mostly white college students from Brown and other, top tier universities, upwardly mobile kids. And then when 3 of those workers, 2 of them white, Andrew Goodman and Michael Schwerner, and 1 black, James Chaney, went missing, the FBI came. And when the FBI came to look for those young men who had been murdered, they found the bodies of 9 other black men when they dredged the rivers, whom nobody had been looking for except local communities and their families. And so the reality is that the unfortunate thing about this country is often when white people who are working on the right side of justice and trying to defend, doing allyship, when they die, a nation pays attention. So what we're seeing in Minneapolis is not new. But I think what's happening is when you have, for instance, somebody like Alex Preddy who dies, and he is legally carrying a firearm, and he is doing God's work in trying to protect these women. But now the intersection of his whiteness, his maleness, and Second Amendment rights has been something that is too far for people like Greg Abbott and other Republicans speaking out against it.
Yeah, and not only that, that component of it is that he was just the best of us. He was an ICU
Yes,
nurse. He was an ICU nurse.
an
There's video of
angel.
him reading, tributes
Yeah.
to the fallen in his hospital. He was just the best of us,
Yes.
objectively, and that happening really, I think it could potentially become a turning point here.
Yes.
Hopefully, I think obviously we shouldn't get too happy about some of the rhetorical changes the Trump admin
Yeah.
is making. They're still on the ground harassing people as recently as
Right.
yesterday,
We need policy
today.
change.
We need
Yeah.
policy changes, but yes, no, that's spot on. And also everyone watching, thank you. Keep hitting that like button there. We see you in the comments. Keep
Mhm.
chiming in as best you can. Gonna see if we can get some questions in if you have any. And also subscribe, become a paid
Yes.
subscriber to my newsletter, subscribe to the Institute for Common Power. We're going to be doing
Thank
a lot
you.
more of this. These historical parallels are important. But yeah, no, I mean, that backlash is really what we're seeing here is that when the injustices get put in your face
Yeah.
and they get put in the face of people who look like you, it
Mhm.
becomes a different story where the Northerners saw that their waiter at their local restaurant
Yes.
didn't know they were a former slave. They were getting captured up. that created a backlash that created, and when reading into this even further, it's really remarkable the parallels. Like there were literally networks that would alert
Yes,
people about
just like now.
the slave catchers are on the way,
Yeah,
hide people. It was exactly the same. And although of
yeah.
course the parallels not they're not being returned to slavery, but in some cases they're being returned to countries they haven't been in decades. They're being
And they're
returned
being
to,
murdered.
and they're being murdered, or they're going to
Yeah,
detention centers where they're getting where they're not getting care that they need, or getting strangled in the case we've seen recently.
yeah.
And
Separated
so
from their children.
this the family separation aspect of this,
Yep.
all of those parallels are in the slave catchers. And again, we beat that back. Now, one of the things that is worrying about that backlash is that those were in the days leading up to the Civil War. What
They
ended
were.
up happening was the Northerners became so fiercely abolitionists. They were also willing to go to war for it, right? And then we had Abraham Lincoln come in, and that election was pivotal. Then obviously the Kansas-Nebraska Act was the actual pivot point that led us to war. But now what I'm kind of thinking is like, what cautionary tales could be learned from this era to prevent
Another
what
Civil War.
yes, I mean, I'm not saying that we're headed that way, but when you have people who are now putting their bodies on the line
Yeah,
out in Minnesota, and people, and I think they're winning. Frankly, they're rebuffing
they are.
the Trump admin. And like you said, when white people are beginning to put their lives, using their privilege for good,
Yeah.
in this case, it ends up creating more of a backlash. But do you think do you think now, especially after Alex Preddy, maybe we're maybe turning towards a potential where they went too far, overplay their hand, and we might be moving more towards that other reality rather than conflict?
I hope so. I think so, and I think it again. I use that term as the visibility of the violence. If we look at this at the civil rights movement, for instance, it is when people saw on camera peaceful protesters being beaten in Selma, Alabama, on March 7th, that a nation came to help them, and that would lead to the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So it is that way of shaking people out of their complicity that can lead to real policy change because it unites people across difference. And I think right now the visibility of some of these murders is what we see. We saw it with George Floyd when it is
Yes.
captured on film. That's why the ACLU is now giving workshops on how to properly capture things on film because people have to see. There will still be those who are given to cognitive dissonance who say, no, it's something else. But the majority of normal, free thinking, good hearted people will see the injustice and act. And so, what we need that to turn into is pressure on Congress and policy change. This is 2026. And one of the things that we will be talking about on Sunday is the fact that we are up now for what could be dismantling the current regime and bringing in people who will implement those policies to create real and lasting change. We have most of Congress up for new seats right now. And I think, some of the people who are speaking out against it, who are Republicans, they're probably afraid of losing their seats. Fine. Whatever is the thing that is motivating them to speak out, we need to jump on that and take that all the way over the finish line. I mean, that the Institute for Common Power, we are an educational branch of Common Power. We mobilize volunteers for voters. At the teach-in on Sunday, we're going to be talking about that. People feel powerless. We have pathways for you to have power. We are going to
Yes.
teach you how to go mobilize people to vote, how to get them registered to vote, how to fight against some of this gutting of the 1965 Voting Rights Act that is designed to stop people from voting. So I think, yes, we can prevent an all-out kind of climax in the way that we saw it in the middle of 2 centuries ago by making sure that we come together continuously across difference, understand our political power, and put pressure on Washington and those who will be coming in to do the right thing.
No, it's that. Yep, that's it. That was the answer I was hoping for. That's exactly where my head is at too. I think because we have more tools at our disposal, because we have more uh, rights, we have more freedoms, we have the vote. We have, there was no, back in, 1850, during that time, during this, there's all they had in a lot of cases was violence, especially,
Mhm.
black. It came up to war because there was no mechanism for freedom, right?
Right.
Now, but then we earned that right, and like you said, through a lot of really intelligent direct action campaigns in 1950s and 1960s. And I just gave that speech MLK Day,
Yes. Well
and
done.
just like thinking so much about these parallels about, yes, we if they could do it in their time, we 100% can do
Yeah.
it in ours. And you're right, this is an election year. The
Mhm.
differences here is that the Trump admin has drastically overreached, and if anything, what happened over the last several days While I was deeply demoralized after the Alex Preddy thing, but the
Yeah,
reaction to it now, the Trump admin squirming, is hopeful because
it
it's
is.
regimes that are all powerful don't squirm under pushback like this. They
Right.
are a weak regime where a
Yeah.
Republican
Unless it's
Congress,
fractured.
yep, they have a fractured coalition. They have Congress that is afraid of them. We're in woke 2, woke 1 was out there. Now we're in
Yeah.
the woke sequel year where people are back. They're, business leaders are being forced to speak
Yes.
out.
Yeah.
Apolitical people I haven't seen posting about politics whatsoever are suddenly on my
Sports
IG feed.
leagues.
Yes, sports leagues. And this election year is not going to go the way of Republicans. And like you said, that is
Yeah.
where you have that capacity to begin holding, President Trump to account, begin pushing back on that administration, begin impeachment
Right.
proceedings for the cabinet members, embroil this administration in the probes that they need to
Yeah.
be under. And I think we're in a place where I'm still optimistic. And I think once again, they've
Yeah.
overplayed their hands on this immigration front, and Americans have woken up across the board.
Yeah.
Like there was that whole some people who were posting about Charlie Kirk. They're being silent. Some of them
They're
silent now.
silent
It's
now.
like, but it's
Right.
like, you know what?
Yeah. Show me your white supremacy.
You are proving that you're wrong. You're on
Yes.
the wrong side. You're on the wrong side. You don't want. You're on the wrong side. It's very
Yeah.
clear. It's never been more crystal clear that this is demonstrably morally wrong,
It
and
is.
that's why the admin is squirming.
That's right, and it's like I think it's, Sergeant O'Hare, Captain O'Hare in Minneapolis, who's a white
Yes.
or sheriff, I'm not sure what he is, but he's a
Yeah.
a white man who is getting on television, part of law enforcement, saying, "Listen, ICE is harassing my black and brown police officers." And so people are beginning who said, "Oh, I just wanna control illegal immigration." Some of those people still, again, cognitive dissonance, they're going to see what they wanna see, they think people are murderers and hardened criminals, XYZ. The only hardened criminal is the one occupying a high seat in the White House
Yeah.
right now. But what that is doing is people are beginning to wake up and recognize that the administration is engaged in a form of ethnic cleansing. And that is something that is too far for folks. They are recognizing the racialized injustice of this. They are recognizing that anyone, regardless of what color you are, white, black, brown, whatever, gets in the way of what they're trying to do, then they can be stopped with a level of impunity that is unacceptable. We have a right in this country to peacefully protest. But now what we see happening is peaceful protesters are being attacked and hurt and murdered. And we've seen this before, and we cannot allow it to happen again. That's where we
Yes.
are right now.
Yep, exactly. And now we see, that you mentioned that he's actually a police chief, and it's
Yes.
wild that I guess in the national cultural divorce we're gonna get police.
Yeah.
Liberals are gonna get police and the Second Amendment.
Right.
Apparently, oh
We
no,
became the party of
we're
protecting our constitutional rights to the court. The Second Amendment, the First Amendment, right? The Fourth
police.
Amendment.
I'm gonna get a thin blue line flag now over here.
Exactly.
We're gonna have police facing off against ICE.
This is what we
ICE come enforce to New York. See what the NYPD does under Mamdani. But
they've
yes, I
already
will.
started yelling at some of the ICE on the street.
Oh, they just, yeah, they cannot hang here.
Right. Anytime that I am watching the news and saying Greg Abbott has a good point, I know the tides are turning.
They're cooked. And again, they overreach. They live in a bubble. Trump is so much more insulated this term. He's got Stephen Miller in his ear, like the guy from Lord of the Rings, just like just controlling him. And again, I think we're approaching a new era here. I think it's
Yeah.
like as I've been writing, and me and Charles, Charles Douglas, for those who don't know,
Yeah.
executive director, Common Power, since the beginning of this last year. The moment I saw Elon pop up there, I was like, they're cooked. They're overreaching. They're
Sure.
overreaching. They burned all their political will. They're unleashing cruelty on people, and now they're tarnishing the economy at the same time. As you know, as a historian, most authoritarians that are elected authoritarians don't succeed by immediately burning the economy to the ground.
No, that's the worst way.
That's the worst. No, that's yeah, it
How
doesn't
they
work.
turn on you. Yeah.
Exactly. So you got to need at least the bread and circuses. So I
Mhm.
think what we have here is a situation where, yes, the parallels to the slave catchers are there, but there's also parallels to the backlash, and
Yes.
there's other parallels in the
To the
movement we're
unity.
seeing to the
Yeah.
unity, to the Jim Crow era, post
Mhm.
Jim Crow response, the civil rights era, and
Yeah.
now we're seeing, I think, the American people showing more bravery than any Republican lawmaker walking the halls of Congress.
100%. Yeah, and I think they recognize that, and some of them are wise enough to see the writing on the wall. And some of them, I do believe it appeals to their morality, and they say that we can't do that. Much like the governor who just stepped down from running the Republican Party from Minnesota. I believe him when I have no reason not to believe him when he says that I can't morally do this. And so
Yes.
that's what we continue to have to appeal to. We can change the hearts and minds of people. We have done it before, and we will continue to do it now.
Exactly. The moral case is what needs to be pushed. Moral leadership. Dr.
Right.
King knew this intrinsically, and it worked. It worked in that
Yeah,
era, and it can work in ours. So, thank
absolutely.
you, Dr. Scott. I
Thank
know you. I know
you.
you have to go. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. Thank you for watching. I see y'all hitting that like button. Keep hitting it. You spamming it. Spam it until the live ends.
That's
Appreciate it.
right.
Hit the
Thank you.
subscribe button. Subscribe to me. Become a paid subscriber if you can, and subscribe to the Institute of Common Power. And over Zoom, it's virtual.
Yeah,
What time is the teaching?
it's
You'll be
from
from Minneapolis.
yeah, 1 to 5 p.m., and we're gonna be educating or we're gonna be interviewing teachers on the ground. We're gonna have a lawyer come and talk to us about, everyone's rights, and we're going to be in the different places in Minneapolis. We'll have some lectures from some other professors who are drawing some parallels to history. Please join us. Learn how to get involved.
1 p.m. Eastern time.
1 p.m. Eastern.
1 p.m. Eastern. All right, great. And for those watching, if you already subscribed, you subscribe so you can get that link. I'm going to put the link in the body of the write up on this video. Thank you so much, Dr. Scott. We're
Thank
going to do this
you.
again. There's too much
Yes.
history to dissect. So thank you for being here.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you for your great work.
Of course. Thank you too.
Bye-bye.